Welcome back, everyone. I appreciate you joining me today because we have a brand new story to dive into. So let's get started. No one enters a marriage expecting to lie awake at night, dissecting every little inconsistency in their spouse's stories. But for me, that became my reality. My wife, Cara, was giving me all the signs of someone living a double life, though at first, I didn't want to believe it. It started with small things, errands that stretched for hours, grocery runs for items we didn't even need, sudden meetups with friends I'd never heard of before. Each time, she had an explanation, always calm, always reasonable. But that was the problem. When someone has an answer for everything, it stops feeling reassuring and starts feeling like a well-rehearsed script. The biggest red flag was her phone. It was never out of her hand, or if it was placed face down, locked with a password I wasn't allowed to know, if she ever left it unattended. Even for a second, she would rush back to grab it like it was a ticking bomb. She never let me borrow it, not even for something as simple as checking the weather. And the strangest part? She deleted everything. Every text, every call log, even our own conversations. What kind of married woman needs to wipe her phone clean every single day? I wasn't naive. I knew something was happening. But knowing and proving are two very different things. I consider hiring a private investigator. But we weren't exactly rolling in money, and I couldn't justify the cost. If I wanted the truth, I had to find it myself. So I started watching her more closely. I looked for patterns, inconsistencies. Anything confirmed what my gut already knew. But she was good. It felt like I was chasing shadows, always one step behind, unable to catch her in a lie. Then, the truth came out in the worst way possible. One evening, a friend sent me a link with a simple message. "Bro, you need to see this." I clicked on it, and my stomach dropped. It was a 20-second clip of my wife, naked, moaning, wrapped around another man. At first, I refused to believe it. Maybe it was someone who just looked like her. Maybe it was a mistake. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't just some random leak. It was Cara. Her secret lover had posted it, likely by accident, on Snapchat. But once something is on the internet, there's no taking it back. Within minutes, the video had spread, jumping from Snapchat to leaked sites, gossip forums, even Twitter. Strangers were dissecting it, making jokes about it. And the worst part? Some of my own friends had already seen it before I did. I confronted Cara immediately. She tried to deny it, feigning ignorance. But when I held up my phone, showing her the undeniable proof, she just stared, eyes wide, lips trembling. And then she scoffed. "It's Photoshop," she said. "It's fake. Someone is trying to ruin us." I almost laughed. Even now, with the entire world watching, she still thought she could talk her way out of it. "Photoshop." I repeated, my voice eerily calm. "Cara, it's a video." She had no answer for that. She just kept shaking her head, scrambling for excuses, but there was no coming back from this. I made my decision right then and there. While Cara was still busy trying to do damage control, I had already contacted a lawyer. I filed for divorce immediately. There was nothing left to save. She tried to talk to me that night, to plead, to justify, but I wasn't listening. The moment I saw that video, whatever love I had left for her was gone. The woman I married no longer existed. But there was one last question that haunted me. The child I had been raising as my own for 2 years. Was he really mine? I didn't want to believe that Cara had betrayed me on every possible level. But at this point, I couldn't trust anything anymore. So I kept my suspicions to myself while secretly taking the steps to find out the truth. I collected a few strands of Miles' hair from his baby brush and submitted my own DNA sample for testing. Then I waited. The day the results arrived, my hand shook as I opened the envelope. I read the words once. Then again, my brain refusing to process them. Probability of paternity, 0%. Had she known all along? Did it even matter? The damage was done. My marriage was over, and now, even the one thing I've been holding on to, fatherhood, was a lie, too. By the time we got to court, I had nothing left to say to her. I presented the DNA test results along with the leaked video as evidence of her infidelity. The judge barely reacted. It was clear he had seen cases like this before. Or maybe he just saw the devastation in my eyes and understood there was nothing left to discuss. The divorce was finalized, and with that, I was free from Kara. But she wasn't happy. She hated what she got in the settlement, but I couldn't care less. She could have taken every penny we had, and I still wouldn't have stayed. At that point, money meant nothing to me. I had lost something far greater, the life I thought I had. So I walked out of that courtroom without a second glance, determined never to look back. After the divorce, I knew I couldn't stay in that city. Everywhere I went, there were reminders of Kara, of what she did, of what I lost. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want people telling me to heal or forgive. I just wanted to disappear. So I did. I cut off everyone connected to her, her friends, her family, even mutual acquaintances. If they knew her, they would never hear from me again. I deleted my social media, changed my number, and packed up whatever little I cared to take. I didn't leave a forwarding address. As far as that version of me was concerned, I was dead. Starting over wasn't as easy as people made it sound. I moved to a new state where no one knew my name or my past. I thought the change of scenery would help, but pain doesn't just disappear. It follows you. It lingers in the quiet moments, sneaking up on you when you least expect it. I tried to distract myself. I picked up new hobbies, woodworking, hiking, even learning to cook something other than instant noodles. I forced myself to talk to neighbors, to say yes when invited out for drinks, to pretend I was just another guy living a normal life. I even made a few friends. But love? That was out of the question. I didn't trust myself anymore. I had given my heart to a woman who set on fire, and I wasn't about to hand the ashes to someone else. Every time I even considered dating, a voice in my head reminded me how blind I had been before. So I convinced myself that this was enough. A half-life, a safe existence where no one could hurt me again. It was lonely, but at least it was secure. And then everything changed. It started with a new neighbor moving in. I didn't think much of it at first. I had lived in this neighborhood for years, keeping to myself, not the type to knock on doors with a welcome basket. But fate had other plans. First, we ran into each other at the mailbox, then at the grocery store. And then one day, when she locked herself out of her house, she knocked on my door, asking to use my phone. That was the first time I really looked at her. And for the first time in a long time, something in me shifted. The first time I saw her, I recognized the sadness in her eyes before she even spoke. It was a look I had seen in the mirror for years. One of quiet grief, of loss that never truly fades. Her name was Elaine. She had lost her husband in a car accident a few years ago, though she didn't share the details right away. And I didn't press her for them. At first, our conversations were light, casual exchanges that helped pass the time. But as the months went by, those conversations turned into something deeper. Long talks over coffee, moments of quiet understanding. She had endured a kind of pain that reshaped her world, a pain that mirrored my own in a way I hadn't expected. And because she understood, because she carried her own wounds, I found it easier to open up to her. For the first time since my divorce, I spoke about the betrayal that had nearly destroyed me. I told her about the son I believed was mine, only to discover through a DNA test that he wasn't. I told her how I had walked away from everything, my marriage, my home, my entire past, because I didn't know how to deal with the devastation. Elaine didn't judge me. She didn't offer empty words of pity. She simply listened, and in her presence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Neither of us was looking for love, and maybe that's why it happened so naturally. We spent time together without expectations, watching movies, taking long walks, sharing pieces of ourselves in quiet conversations. After years of believing that love was nothing more than a trap, I finally allowed myself to believe that it didn't have to be. When we finally became more than friends, it wasn't dramatic or overwhelming. It was steady, real, something built on trust rather than fear. As the years passed, we built a life together. And then we had a daughter. That changed everything. The moment I held her in my arms, I knew she was my second chance. A chance to be the father I had once wanted to be, a chance to create the kind of love and security I had been denied growing up with Elaine and our daughter. I felt something I hadn't felt in almost 2 decades. I felt whole. One morning, Elaine and our daughter were away visiting her family, leaving me alone in the house. I had no plans for the day, just a cup of coffee and the silence I had come to appreciate over the years. Then came the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I didn't think much of it as I walked to the door. The moment I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. A young man stood before me, no older than 20. His posture was tense, his expression unreadable. But that wasn't what froze me in place. It was his face. It was like staring into a mirror of my younger self. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then, in a voice that was steady but carried an undercurrent of emotion, the young man said, "Hello, sir. I'm Miles. I've been looking for you." The name sent a jolt through me. Miles. The only Miles I had ever known was, no, that wasn't possible. My instinct screamed at me to shut the door, to walk away before the past could drag me back. But something, curiosity, or maybe something deeper, kept me rooted in place. Without a word, I stepped aside and let him in. Inside, I moved mechanically, pouring him a cup of coffee while my mind raced. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, watching me carefully. I had spent nearly 2 decades burying my past, convincing myself it was over, that I had made peace with it. But now, in the span of minutes, it had come knocking on my door. And worse, it had my face. The silence between us stretched, thick with unspoken words. I didn't know what to say, so I waited for him to speak first. "I've been looking for you for years," Miles said, his fingers gripping the coffee cup as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. "Every penny I made, I put into searching for you." I frowned, confused. "Why?" His eyes met mine, steady, unwavering. "Because you're my father." I laughed, not out of amusement, but out of sheer disbelief. "No, I'm not," I said, shaking my head. "I saw the DNA test. I made peace with that years ago." Miles didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a folder, sliding across the table. His gaze never left mine. "Read this." Reluctantly, I opened the folder. The first document was a medical report from when Miles was 5 years old. He had needed an emergency blood transfusion, but there had been a problem. His blood type didn't match the man he had been calling Dad. Confused, the doctors had ordered a DNA test. The results: the man wasn't his father. I flipped through more pages, my hand shaking. As he grew older, Miles had taken multiple DNA tests, desperate to find the truth. Each one confirmed the same thing. I was his biological father. I stared at the papers, my vision blurring. This couldn't be real. It couldn't, but the proof was right there in my hands. "I don't believe this," I muttered, pushing the papers away. My voice was barely above a whisper. "You can leave now." Miles didn't move. His eyes locked onto mine. And then he said the words that shattered me. "Please don't leave me again." I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him to walk out that door and never come back. But something in his voice, something in his eyes, made me pause. "Fine," I said, my voice hollow. "One last test. But if it says you're not mine, I don't want to see you ever again." Miles nodded. His expression remained unreadable. "Deal." The next morning, we went to the best lab in the city. There would be no room for doubt. I watched as they collected our samples, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. The results were ready the next day. When I opened the envelope, my eyes scanned the paper. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The paper slipped from my hands. I had abandoned my own son for 18 years. When I looked up, Miles was watching me, waiting, hoping. And for the first time since I had walked away from my old life, I felt my walls collapse. I had missed everything: his childhood, his birthdays, his struggles, his joys. I had left him to grow up in a home that never truly welcomed him. Tears blurred my vision. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." Miles let out a breath. "I was angry for a long time," he admitted. "But I didn't come here just be angry. I came here because I needed my father. I couldn't fix the past. I couldn't give him back the years he had lost. But I could give him something else. A father who would never walk away again.